everyone, this is Car Ray Rob, where I'm Ray.
And I'm Rob, and we want to welcome you to our new podcast, A Copy of a Copy.
A copy of a copy. A copy of a copy. A copy of a copy. A copy of a copy. A copy of a copy. A copy of a copy. A copy of a copy. A copy of a copy. A copy of a copy.
That's right, everyone. We are back with a brand new episode of A Copy of a Copy. Ray, tell everybody what it is we do here.
With A Copy of a Copy, me and Rob are looking to compare originals and remakes, see some of the similarities, some of the differences, what's better, what's worse, and we also want to look at the different ways that movies can be remade.
Exactly. And we have a new outlook, a new take on the remakes today.
I like that.
And it is called the stealth remake.
Ooh.
That's what I'm going to call it. I'm going to call it the stealth remake.
I like that category.
And it is a movie that is not actually marketed as a remake of another movie, even though it most definitely is.
You have a good example of that, you think?
We do. So a couple months back on our Say Hello to My Little Film podcast, cheap plug, I showed Ray In a Lonely Place, starring Humphrey Bogart, who is one of my favorite actors, and I was very excited to show him that movie, but it was an obscure choice, if you will. An obvious choice would have been Casablanca,
which I have not seen either, so you could have chose that.
I could have, and when I knew you had not watched Casablanca, I knew I had to find a way to make you watch it, and I figured out how I'm going to do that, and that is because this week on A Copy of a Copy,
Casablanca.
Well, what it is there is Casablanca, and then there is the 1996 superhero film, if you will, Barb Wire.
What?
Starring Pamela Anderson.
Hold on. I think you're making a mockery of what this podcast is supposed to be.
Nope, I am not in any way. In fact, that was one of the big reasons why a lot of people kind of panned this movie, is because it's more or less just a beat for beat remake, or for the most part, a little bit changes here and there, of Casablanca, just with like a gender flip and a dystopian background.
So they went from Humphrey Bogart
Yep.
to Pamela Anderson.
Yep.
That is some casting director needs to have lost their job. Okay, Rob. So I generally know like what Casablanca's kind of about, but what are they really about?
Well, both films, Casablanca and Barb Wire, center on a kind of a club owner. So Humphrey Bogart in Casablanca, Pam Anderson in Barb Wire, and they're both kind of again backdrop of civil unrest. So it's World War II for Casablanca, and it's the Second American Civil War in Barb Wire.
I don't remember that.
And I guess she owns a club in Steel Harbor, where obviously his is in Casablanca, hence the name, and Steel Harbor is the last free city in the United States. And both of the characters in both films encounter somebody from their past, a former lover, who are on the run from a force. So it's the government in Barb Wire, it's the Nazis in Casablanca. And they are forced with this choice to kind of give up everything that they currently have to help this person or return to their former revolutionary ways and, kind of help them out and save the day, that kind of thing.
Okay, well, intriguing.
Yeah, so, you got, it's different. So you get Humphrey Bogart in one, and you got Pamela Anderson in the other.
Way different.
Yeah, it's way different. But, it's Pam Anderson, so.
It is, and I don't know how I missed out on watching Barb Wire when I was a kid. So I'll have some work to do.
Wire?
I know.
Even as a young man in 1996, when Pam Anderson was literally everywhere and the object of everybody's desire.
I did not. Barb Wire did not do it for me. I guess.
I did watch it then. Yeah, I did watch it then. But again, it has been a while. And as we all have, I'm sure, know, Pamela Anderson is having a moment again.
She's having a bit of a comeback.
You know, she had that doc
I
on
watched the doc.
Netflix.
It was great.
There you go. And then she was also recently in The Last Showgirl. So she is definitely having a moment again. So I feel like it is, you know, prime time to revisit Barb Wire as well as Casablanca, which is, again, one of my favorite films. I've seen it in the theater multiple times, as well as, you know, obviously own it at home. And it's one I'm excited to share with you and kind of have this, you know, unconventional
Yeah.
remake kind of, you know,
Yeah,
side by side with it.
I like that we have this opportunity to see an unconventional remake, a stealth remake, as we're calling it here, I guess,
Yes,
on
a
Car
stealth
Ray Rob.
remake. I think we're coining it here. You heard it here first, folks. Car Ray Rob stealth remakes.
Okay, guys. Well, I am looking forward to seeing one of these movies. I'm intrigued with the other, but a little nervous. But we'll see. I'm gonna take a break and go watch these two movies.
Yep.
I'm going to invite everybody who's listening to the podcast, if you haven't seen Casablanca or Barbed Wire, do the same thing. Take a break, go check out those two movies, then come back and participate in the discussion through listening of this remake, Casablanca and Barbed Wire.
Ray and Rob are currently watching the film. Wait, films? There are two? How long is this supposed to take? I've got places to be, you know. Ray and Rob will be right back when they're done watching the films.
All right, everyone, we're back. And I before we go 1 second further into this back half, I gotta get it off my chest. Now I gotta scream it to the rafters. I love Casablanca. Every time I watch this movie, I love it. I just can't even put it into words.
Yeah, it's going to be hard to put into words, but that is your task. Now, I've avoided Casablanca for 41 years successfully.
Shame.
I feel shame. It
Good.
was so good.
Good. I am glad.
I was fully expecting to be able to dig my heels in and say, like, it's fine. It's totally
Right.
overrated. No, it's rated appropriately.
It's one of the greatest films ever made.
Yes, and
Hands
so,
down.
this conversation is about the remake Barbed Wire. And my question to you, Rob, is this a remake or is this copyright infringement?
Well, it's funny. I feel like, what we do on this podcast is we look at originals and remakes and we have to, kind of dissect why things are made. And we call this a stealth remake.
Yeah.
Because this is never, truly marketed as a remake of Casablanca. And I think the reason is clear. Is because you don't want to draw those comparisons.
That's a pretty hefty claim to be like,
Right.
we've remade Casablanca and this is what we got.
Yeah.
Like, no, don't put that on you.
I mean, in recent years, I think Madonna has been trying to get a remake off the ground of Casablanca with her
Really?
in the Ingrid Bergman role, and Casablanca is honestly like the third rail of remakes.
Don't
Like you
do
just
it.
don't do it.
And I will say, like, I was watching this movie and just subtly in my brain, I kept thinking of that conversation we had with Invasion of the Body Snatchers, where I was like, that is a smart, updated remake of a movie from the 50s to like the late 70s or whatever it
Yeah.
was. I'm like, you could, and as I was watching Casablanca and loving it, I'm like, you could totally remake this. Like, you could make this they could have done this during certain times. Like, you could have done this in the Cold War. You could have
Sure.
done this in many times in different countries throughout the Middle East or wherever you want to be. Like, this is a movie that would be, in a way, easily adaptable because it's just so timeless.
Mhm.
I could see why you would be scared to. I'm not saying they should have,
Right.
but I'm like, oh man, this is not going to be that hard to remake. This movie is really good. The characters, like, they aren't like stuck in their own time. Like, they are just brilliantly written characters.
Right.
They could exist at any time. Why haven't they ever done this? And then I thought, oh yeah, we are going to watch somebody who tried to do that. And there is no doubt in my mind, Barbed Wire we call it a stealth remake. It is a remake.
Yeah.
It is trying to do what
Yep.
Casablanca did.
Because a few beats are different, but for the most part, it is the same story.
And it is not well done. I mean, I don't, I will say, I'm going to frame it in the context where this is the first time I've seen either of these. And
Right.
for this podcast, naturally, like, I am comparing the two, and I watched it with that frame of mind of like, how are you doing at remaking Casablanca. So I think I see it maybe in a more negative light than you.
Probably.
You
Well,
saw it more. You've seen it before.
Yeah, I've seen both of these movies before, and for me, Barb Wire fits very much in the time that it was made. That '90s string of sci-fi movies. If I think about like Johnny Mnemonic and
Sure.
Hackers and Strange Days, and this type of sci-fi movie, that kind of is very much rooted in that industrial dystopian feel. It does hold a bit of a special place in my heart just because I watched it when I was a kid. Now, however, as you said, having to, if you go in not knowing that it's a remake of Casablanca and you're just
Mhm.
taking it for what it is, you're like, okay, that's fine. But when we are literally, doing a podcast where you watch it back
We're
to back with
Thinking about it
Casablanca,
scene versus scene.
exactly, and then you're like, oh,
Ah,
so there is a
it's tougher.
cloud.
It's
There's
tougher.
a cloud. I
Yeah.
get it. I
Yeah.
get the cloud.
Well, let's have some fun then and talk about the movies because there, like we said, there are direct comparisons. It's not very hard to tell that this is a remake as stealthy as they may have marketed it. But Humphrey Bogart,
Yeah.
versus Pamela Anderson.
Yeah. Let's
Kind of, yeah. I'm
well-
sorry. I kind of said in the before section that casting seems like different ends of the spectrum, and I'd have to agree.
yeah, no,
with myself.
and that's fair. It's fair and it's unfair
Yeah.
because
It's
know-
Rick versus Barb Wire. Rick is so much better a character.
right. Well, and not only just that, but you're again Humphrey Bogart, literally one of the greatest actors to ever live. So
Yeah.
I think that's also a huge part of it, and it's unfortunate, and I almost feel bad for Pamela Anderson in a way because like I honestly, if I put myself in her headspace, I can imagine she thought, okay, I'm going to knock this out of the park.
Right.
And I think for what they gave her, she did. Because unfortunately, this was a vehicle for her specifically, and we'll get more into that, comparatively to the supporting characters. But I think they were so just hell bent and focused on selling her as a sex goddess,
Right.
that they didn't allow her to truly act the role.
Yeah, I was a little surprised because everything I kind of thought I knew about Pamela Anderson, like through docs and FX TV shows, I thought like this was her way of trying to break away from Baywatch and like just being just a sex symbol.
Yeah.
But then when the opening scene is her stripping, I was like, no,
Yeah.
this was just
And
the
you
same
base it,
thing.
and when you see your boobs, I
Yeah,
mean, just
I'm
like
like, this
bare,
is just the
bare
same
boobs,
thing.
and
Yeah.
and it's like, okay, so this was, it is what it is, and and I do think part of that was again this style of film that was made at the time, that kind of pushing the edge, especially with things like nudity and
Yeah.
that kind of stuff. It just kind of was a natural bedfellows, pun intended, but this kind of like again objectification of her, in certain regards, like I understand leaning into it because again this was probably the height of her sexual powers.
Sure.
This was actually a year after her and Tommy Lee's sex tape
Mhm.
was released, so at that point that was everywhere. And so they were, I think for her at this moment, I could see her feeling as like a liberation,
Sure.
leaning into this role and saying, I'm just going to own it. You know what I mean? Everybody's seen me naked anyway because of this
Sure.
this damn sex tape. I'm just going to lean into it, and I think that that's fair. And I if that was her mindset, obviously I don't know for sure, but if that was, more power to her.
Yeah.
Kind of trying to take her life back. But as far as a driving force in
yeah,
the movie,
right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It left a bit to be desired.
Yeah, and really, like you said, I think a lot of the problems with Barb Wire aren't necessarily Barb and Pamela Anderson, but it's like the relationships in Casablanca are so complex.
Yeah.
They're so well like slow burned, and the
Yeah.
information of how this love triangle has like come to pass is dripped so slowly and well perfectly paced for you. And then in Barb Wire, it's almost like non-existent. It's like the thing that makes Casablanca so interesting to me, because I was really shocked at how interesting I found these characters from the 40s. They were super complex for I think that time of just how movies were made.
Yeah.
And then Barb Wire, like there really is nothing there. Like you're remaking Casablanca, and the best part of it, you're not really doing anything with.
Yeah.
So like the Elsa and Victor relationship mixed with Rick.
Yeah.
Like that is the crux of the movie. It's like who's Elsa going to end up with? Is it Rick? Is it Victor? Are they all going to live? Like how did this happen? Like how did Elsa get herself in this position? It's like such interesting questions throughout. But in Barbed Wire, it's like Cordy, who's supposed to be like the Elsa comparison, is like
No,
not.
Cordy is not the Elsa comparison. She's the Victor Laszlo.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, she's Victor
But-
Laszlo. Axel is Ilsa.
Yeah, but but like the Cordy and Axel, they have so few ties
Right.
to Barbed Wire,
Right.
that it's just like to her as the person, not the movie, like the character. It's like you don't really ever feel like there's nothing interesting to really question about the relationship. They're like Axel and Cordy are married, okay, and Barbed Wire had a fling with him, and then she doesn't really seem that interested in re-engaging the fling. Either does Axel. Like
Yeah,
it's
all
just
very
there's-
forced.
yeah, there's nothing there.
Yeah. Well, and especially because they never really tell you why he didn't show up at that time,
Right.
at the helicopter. And I think that part of that is, I honestly think in their minds that he was maybe already married to Cora D, or at least, but no, maybe not. Like, I don't know. Either
Well,
way.
they say that they met at Kansas in the Topeka incident, but we have no frame of reference for when that is
Right.
in regards to this, made up Seattle incident. So it's
Right.
like there's no context.
Exactly. So it's hard to, obviously feel for that situation the way you do for Rick, Ilsa, and Victor Laszlo, because obviously Ilsa was with Victor Laszlo, but she thought he was dead, and
Right.
that's why she fell in love with Rick and everything else. But
And then she
You
went back to him when she found out Victor was alive, and that's why she left Rick.
right,
It all makes
exactly.
sense. It all checks.
Exactly. And I think this really kind of goes to the point I was kind of hinting at earlier, whereas, Casablanca, I would not blame anybody for walking in thinking it's a Humphrey Bogart movie.
That's what I thought.
If you ask people 9 times out of 10 who's the star of Casablanca, Humphrey Bogart is the name that comes out of their mouth.
Maybe
when you watch-
Humphrey and Ingrid.
Well, right, but I would say most
Yeah.
people would just say Humphrey just because it's the name that they register with it. But when you watch the movie, that's not how it is. Like, yes,
Right.
he is a tour de force, but so is Ingrid Bergman. So is Paul Henreid. Like, and even going down the line with Claude Rains, with Conrad Veidt, Peter Lorre, Sidney Greenstreet. I mean, all of
Julie
these.
Wilson,
Right.
Sam.
Right. I mean, all of these characters just, jump off the screen. But then when you look at Barbed Wire, it is completely 100% a Pamela Anderson vehicle.
Yeah,
Like, it is about her and it is about nobody else.
yeah. The
And-
rest of the people are just characters.
Right, exactly. They're basically not. I don't want to call them furniture, but part of it is I'm sure we'll dive more into this, but obviously Barbed Wire being more of an action movie, there's more action sequences.
Yeah.
Obviously, there wasn't that in Casablanca. So some of these actors really are almost glorified stunt people in a way,
Sure.
because they have to be for those sequences. But it shortchanges because, again, like these characters, especially since you're using the framework of Casablanca, you're right. The complexity should be there, and it's just not.
It's not, and I don't know. Like that is what makes the movie work. It's like, yeah, we're gonna remake the classic, but everything that really makes it special, we're gonna kind of do our own thing with. We're gonna trim up so we can put in some action sequences. We're gonna totally eliminate so we can put in some, sexual innuendo. And it's like, no, you're cheapening every moment now.
Right.
You're making, or some interesting characters. We're just making comedy relief. Like it's just, there was no real upgrade anywhere, to be seen, and it's tough when you watch them side by side like this. It's not fair, but I kept having some of these thoughts popped in my head, like iconic versus idiotic, because there's so much of Casablanca that's idiotic or iconic. Because as I said, I've avoided watching Casablanca for 41 years, but as I watched it, I think I knew a quarter of the lines because they're
Right.
just so iconic. So
Absolutely.
you have "Here's Looking at You, Kid," an iconic line from Casablanca, compared to the supposedly in quotations iconic line from Barbed Wire, which is "Don't call me babe."
Right.
It's not there.
No.
The closing line of Casablanca, I do believe this is going to be the start of a beautiful friendship. Versus the Willis character
I do
It was
believe
Willis.
I'm falling in love.
I do believe I'm falling in love. Like, no, there was no love story built between you two. You can't just say that. Just have a line start with "I do."
Yeah.
Believe. So it's like iconic versus idiotic. Nothing measures up. They don't do enough work to make it measure up.
Yeah. No, and it's unfortunate because, like I said, when you've got the framework there, You've got that complexity already built in. Yeah, you don't want to rip off the lines. I get it. But also, don't build to those same moments then. You know what I
Right.
mean? Craft the moment differently. But if you're
Yeah.
going to craft the moment to be almost identical, don't have like, a competing line like that that's
Yeah.
has no chance of ringing true the way the final scene of Casablanca does. It's weird.
Yeah, and the final scene, especially like the final scene of Casablanca, is almost untouchable. Like
Oh my
that's
god.
a movie
Oh my
that is.
god.
I mean, I have
Oh.
I have no context for the lines prior. I do now, but like that whole like Humphrey Bogart's whole monologue at the end is a lot of movie buffs probably can just quote it. Like
Yeah.
it's probably top 10 movie lines of all time.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, besides just the final line, everything leading up to it is
Two
absolutely
of us won't
just
amount to a hill of beans in this world.
right. And you're gonna regret it. It may not be now, it might be next week, but it's like yeah, but yes, I mean,
Someday.
someday. And I will say, and it's crazy. Every time I watch this movie, it doesn't matter how many times I watch it, it doesn't matter where I'm watching it, I cry every time during this last sequence. It is so damn good. And there's actually a couple of times in the movie where I at the very least get teary-eyed if I don't flat out start weeping because it is that good.
Yeah, it is that good. And I kind of think again, if we kind of go back and maybe kind of comparing Rick and Barb, and not necessarily Humphrey Bogart and Pamela Anderson. Like the Rick character is so interesting because like his whole thing is that he won't stick his neck out for anybody. He's he's just all about himself, and they do it in such really smart ways where it's subtle context. It's how he's talking. It's what he's putting favor to, and that turn when you start to see him do some favors for people. When he
Right.
starts to, it's like it's so rewarding, and
Oh,
they're
man.
so minute.
Yeah.
They're small, and then they build and they build and they build. But with Barb Wire, it's like I'll do anything for money, and she's a bounty hunter, and she goes and kills. And it didn't feel the same. It's too big. It's
Yeah.
like the bounty hunter thing was like it's too extra. Where like Rick was it was all about the subtlety of his character.
Well, they wanted the action set pieces. I
Yeah.
mean, that's what it was. I mean, again, this type of movie made at that time, that's what they wanted, and it was a studio trying to crank out something that kind of competed with what else was going on
Sure.
at that time. But you're right. I mean, the complexity of Casablanca. I mean, you're talking about like just kind of riffing off a little bit this idea of Rick kind of changing over the course of the movie and doing nice things. I think one of the most brilliant parts of Casablanca is the young married couple.
Oh yeah.
They simmer for so long in that movie. You come back to them multiple times, and sometimes you don't even realize it. I mean, you meet them in the opening sequence, and you don't even think about it.
No.
And then you kind of go through the movie, and then you figure out who they are and what their situation is and how they want to go, and you kind of see how Renault is using that situation to try to obviously bed the wife, and
Yeah.
she comes to Rick and is like, obviously at the time they're not going to just like he wants to sleep with me to
Right.
give me, like that's not how it's going to go, but like she basically tells Rick that's what's happening. And
But she also frames it in a way where it's a comparison to Elsa. Like,
Right.
would you forgive a woman who
Right.
did this?
Absolutely, it totally drives the film forward 100%. And then when Rick sets it up so that they the husband wins at roulette
Yeah.
and can buy the visas to get out. I mean, you're just like, whoa, like oh my god, it's so good.
Yeah,
Like,
I was literally smiling ear to ear when Rick's like put all the money on 22, and then
Right.
the roulette dealer just looks over, and the roulette dealer's like, okay, it's going to be
your
22.
club. It's your club. So
I will say, another thing about Casablanca, and this is just maybe sidetracked. I didn't expect to say this, but like the what is it? Renault. The Renault is the French police chief.
Yep.
Like he is a slime
Rains.
ball and really likable. Like he is
Yes.
very, very well written. Like I don't know what it is, but I'm like, I'm not supposed to like you. You're an absolute slime ball, but I kind of dig this guy.
Right.
It's
Well,
weird.
yeah, well, at the end of the movie, I mean, he's kind
That's who he starts a beautiful friendship
that's who he
with.
starts a beautiful friendship with. So yeah, I mean, it's absolutely, again, it's that slow burn, and you're right. And Claude Rains plays it so well, where you don't necessarily know Renault's allegiance
Right.
truly, and you can tell that he's very opportunistic, and
Sure.
I mean, when you have the right coming in and you're throwing their weight around, and he realizes that he has to play ball at least to a certain degree. So in some ways you can't blame him for that,
No.
because you understand that his life is on the line too.
Right.
When Strasser comes in and kind of tells him, I think about the time when Strasser, when it finally kind of breaks down and Strasser forces him to close the club, because I mean that's obviously like an amazing scene in general. You know, obviously
Yeah.
you have the German soldiers singing the song, and then you
That's-
have
yeah, that's
Victor
strong.
Victor Laszlo coming down, and then having them sing the French anthem, and then in that moment they realize the danger that he poses because of his ability to kind of spread this
Yeah.
this sentiment of uprising. And
Tell me
then
that's not an action scene, though.
Oh my God.
We're talking about how Barb Wire has to do these forced action scenes.
Right.
That's an action scene, and it's just two groups of people singing.
Right. I mean, but
The tension is there.
It's so good. And in that moment, you got Claude Rains. He has to, and at least he believes, in his mind, with Strasser, he's got to play ball. So he closes Rick's down, and that's such a heavy thing to do.
Yeah.
Like it's totally a red line, and it's a red line, and it's a red line in the movie.
Oh, absolutely.
Because Rick's Cafe is such a central part of the narrative,
Yeah.
as a place, as a location. So closing it down, kind of, being this kind of gateway, it's a big deal. But there's always that comedic moment, So oh, there's gambling. I can't believe it. I'm so shocked. And then
Yeah.
here's your winning, sir. Oh, thank you. And he just like quickly puts it in his pocket. And it's such a comedic throwaway moment in a way. But it as far as the Renault character, I mean, it's so telling and
Yeah.
so good.
They also do a good job with Casablanca, because Rick is such a serious character and Victor's a serious character and Elsa's a serious character and the Wright are serious characters. They use the wait staff really smart. Like the wait staff can get you
My God,
can get you the laughs and kind of just alleviate some of the moments a little bit. And I will say I'll give Barb Wire one credit, is I do think that Udo
Kerr.
Udo Kerr
Yeah.
is maybe his maybe he's an upgrade on his counterpart. Curly might be better than that.
Sasha?
Maybe it's close. Maybe it's close.
It's at least it's a foot race. I'll give it that. At least it's a foot race, because everybody else you're dead in the water, Except granted, Peter Lorre's in the movie only for a moment as Ugarte, but then you get Clint Howard, which people could thumb their nose at Clint Howard or whatever, or laugh and giggle, but I actually have a friend who made a short film with Clint Howard a number of years ago, and from what I understand, the man is an absolute sweetheart. So like I definitely have a soft spot for Clint Howard, and I always like to give him the benefit of the doubt.
One other joke I kind of have in here, I kind of talked about idiotic versus iconic. I also kind of wrote poignant versus pointless. Barb Wire has quite a few scenes that are pretty pointless, and the one that sticks out in my brain the most is like this random dude walks into the bar, and they sick the dog on him. Barb Wire sicks her dog on him. The dog bites the man in the balls, holds on for a little bit. She's like, "Don't make me have him roll over." They let go, and then the guy leaves, and that's it. And that really has no callback to anything else in the movie. There was no point into it. It's like the dog biting nuts doesn't come back in any way.
It's like a slight comedic moment for like no real reason.
Kind of a waste of 3 minutes. But so pointless versus poignant. Like everything in Casablanca is so poignant and moves the movie forward and is so meaningful. They don't waste time in any way.
Well, and even some of kind of the side characters, if you will, like Yvonne, the woman who was clearly having an affair with Rick at the beginning of the movie, but he didn't really care about, and it was just kind of threw her away, if you will. And then later she comes back around when she seems like she's giving in and she's going out on a date with one of the German soldiers or the whatever.
Yeah.
And you could argue whether that necessarily mattered. You know what I mean? Like outside of in the beginning, kind of showing how Rick works with women, but then when she comes back, she's one of the people that's singing when Victor Laszlo gets everybody to start singing in the French, and the tears in her eyes and the look on her face, again, it's such an impactful moment from a character that's literally on the periphery, is in the movie 2 scenes, maybe 3 total. And
because they do such a good job with showing the desperation of some of these people to get out of here. It's almost like she's just that opportunistic. She's looking for a way to support herself. And there is that one moment in I thought it was really cute, and I didn't really know if it served a bigger purpose other than just tonally. But it's where Sasha
with the 2 couples,
and he was sat down to drink with them.
12 watch.
Yeah. Just a little joke, but it's showing you how happy these people are to be able to leave and escape. And that just makes you want Victor and Elsa to be able to escape so much more.
Right. Well, and I think it also besides just that, I think it also goes to show how much, and I used the word gateway
Yeah.
earlier with Rick's, and I think it's a very, I use that word intentionally because
Yeah.
I think those moments are showing how Rick's is a gateway.
Yeah, it's like the Sweden. It's like neutrality. It's the only safe spot in the area.
Right,
The
and
gateway.
it's the way people are. It's like they have to pass through Rick's.
Right.
If you're leaving Casablanca, if you're going to the States, whatever, you gotta pass through Rick's. And I think that those little scenes totally, while they might feel superfluous, I think they serve such a large purpose.
Yeah, and Barb Wire just doesn't have things that can compare to that stuff. You know,
No.
they don't have, again, that subtlety's not there. Everything with Barb Wire is just such in your face.
Yeah.
And like you said, when Rick's was shut down, when Rick's was destroyed, that meant something. That was a punch in the gut. That was like a
Yep.
character being killed off.
Mhm.
When Hammerhead gets destroyed, you're like, well, whatever.
Whatever.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah. It's like I'm like, well, she's also a bounty hunter, so it's not like her life's over. But like for Rick, you were like, what is Rick gonna do? Because, and that makes you buy in. Like, is Rick gonna sell Victor out? He might. Like, this is his way to get Elsa back. This is his only way off this place, like out of here. Maybe he will sell Victor down the river to get out.
Right.
So it can have, you don't 100% think it's possible, but it's possible. Where like, I never bought that Barb Wire was going to sell Cora D down the river. That she didn't really have any reason to, like, that relationship with him and Axel didn't mean anything. And I guess really at the end of the day, she wanted to go with Charlie anyway. So it was like,
Right.
why would she mess with this? Like, it's just, the ending just is going to fall flat because the buildup wasn't there. It's just, nothing was the same. It wasn't strong enough.
Yeah. Well, obviously not wanting to ape the entire
Yeah.
plot of Casablanca, they had to make tweaks here and there. So obviously she had to make the deal with Big Fatso instead of in Casablanca, where Rick is kind of making the deal with Renault a little bit, and like
Ferrari.
and Ferrari,
Yeah.
right? Well, Ferrari did to sell the place, yes,
Yeah.
but like as far as like the escape,
Right.
and when you're kind of doing those character switches, I do think that the originals are done for a specific reason. You know what I mean? So you're kind of bringing in this, again, kind of side character in Big Fatso that's just kind of more of a visual gag than anything else.
Yeah.
There's no weight behind him, pun intended. As far as like his character in the narrative, but it is what it is, and but again, you go back to the fact that it's an action movie, and that has to lead to an action set piece.
Yeah.
So you need that final battle on, at the quote unquote airport with the forklift, sequence, and then
Yeah.
you've got the, all the
The
other stuff, the
motorcycle with
motorcycles,
missiles.
and you're right. So you're kind of building to that. That's what they were building to, was that. Whereas Casablanca was building to the airport.
Right.
And
And
just
Yeah. And I guess it's a bit of an action scene. Like, Rick is holding the police chief at gunpoint,
Sure,
and there's a ticking clock as are the Germans going to get there in time? And if they do, what's Rick going to do? Like,
right.
again, just subtle, beautiful tension where you're like at the edge of your seat, and then when the movie's about to end, you're like, "Don't end! I want more." Where Barbed Wire, when they're doing this big action set piece and these guys are just punching each other on the top of a crane, I'm just like, please end this. Get out of here.
Yeah.
I kept checking, like, how much longer?
So another thing about these kind of like 90s movies, and I think this is something I kind of want to touch on real quick, is a lot of these movies, and this kind of set off a string of movies, kind of going forward, is movies that were made for their soundtracks. So, music is such a big part of those movies. I think of The Crow,
Sure.
The Crow in the 90s. I mean, that soundtrack is amazing. I mean, from beginning to end, I own it to this day. I love it. The original Crow soundtrack. And a lot of those movies were kind of, from that era, were built around, different things. I know Hackers was built around the song by Elastica, which is a really great song. Barbed Wire had none of that.
No.
Like, all of the music in it was really just lifeless,
Generic. Yeah.
right? Outside of, they did do, and this was kind of a thing that some other movies did, because I know Strange Days also did something similar, but Barbed Wire had a subtle Patti Smith cover, and I'm a huge Patti Smith fan. I know you know that. I'm a huge Patti Smith fan, and they covered the song She. It's in it for like 10 seconds, but it's good, because I'm just like, I heard it, my ears pricked up. I was like, oh, I did not remember this, because last time I watched this movie, I was not a Patti Smith fan. But they did a PJ Harvey cover, and Juliette Lewis's character does that in Strange Days. Just off topic.
Sure.
But but I'm gonna flip and say, while a lot of these other movies were made for their soundtracks, the music in Casablanca is incredible.
It's better.
Like, oh my god, like
Yeah.
I mean, it's insane
Kiss is
how
just
good.
a kiss.
Oh my,
Yeah.
right.
I
I
mean,
mean,
You're gonna know you have to have a good song when you're gonna have it played like 3 or 4 times. Like it's
Yeah.
got to
Yeah.
slap.
Yeah.
Essentially, that
But every
that
time
music does.
yeah, but every time Sam plays as time goes by, I'm
Yep.
just my body just goes. I get goosebumps. I'm just
Yeah.
like, oh man.
And you
Like,
can feel
so
like
good.
you can just listen to that song and know why it's resonating with Rick and Elsa so much, like why it brings them so much pain, because it's just such a classic, beautiful song that you can tell why there would be so much emotion wrapped around it. And when that emotion's gone sour, you can tell why it hurts him so much to hear it.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's really good. Sam, I really love Sam as this
Yeah.
kind of that friend character, that side character. It's just very powerful. His willingness to want to play both sides, help both sides it's very endearing.
Yeah.
The DJ in Barb Wire has like 4 lines, and
Yeah.
Barb Wire never even talks to him. So
Yeah, I feel like that. As we kind of talked about earlier, the character transpositions from Casablanca to Barb Wire. I don't think that DJ was actually supposed to be the
No.
transposition for Sam. I think Charlie was
yeah,
kind of
probably,
supposed to be
yeah,
that
probably.
because he was the one who knew Barb and Axel during the war.
Right.
Whereas in Casablanca, Sam was with Ilsa and Rick in Paris.
Yeah.
So I think that's more of the character transposition for Sam, but they kind of broke it up because they didn't want to necessarily just rip off everything.
Yeah, Charlie has a meaningful death, and his last line is, "I gave it to Santa Claus." I'm like, great line, Charlie.
Well, I mean, you just you gotta. Not everything can
Do
be
the man a favor, writer, and give him a dang line. Because I actually didn't mind Charlie, to be honest with you.
Yeah, no,
I thought it was
he
somewhat
was fine.
interesting.
Yeah, I like that guy, that actor. Kind of very much again of that time, and I think of an addition, if you want to say an addition to Barb Wire from Casablanca. Yeah, I think mine would probably be Charlie.
Yeah, not better than Sam, but
No,
but as
God,
a-
no,
you
no,
know,
no,
but,
no.
differently used,
Right,
to
a different type
completely
of character.
differently.
Yeah, different type.
Was
of
he
character.
really Barb Wire's brother? Did she just think of him that way? Like that was hard for me to tell too. Like
I mean, none of the relationships are truly fleshed out in Barb
no,
Wire. I mean,
right?
Let's be
That's
real.
why it's just so mucky.
Well, and it's so funny because they even have a backflash or flashback, where it's they go on onto the tarmac or whatever, where this helicopter is like trying to fly away. It's the only time they're willing to not have to have Pam Anderson show the majority of her boobs is when she's in this weird fitting fatigue outfit on this tarmac, and then the kind of the same thing where in Casablanca, somebody comes up and is like, oh, she's not coming, and it's gets the letter or whatever, and it's the same kind of deal.
Axel's not coming.
Right, but Axel's not coming in Barb Wire, and they kind of just leave it at that. Whereas in Casablanca, obviously you find out the truth eventually of why she didn't show up.
It's almost like they're like, just remember what happened in Casablanca, and then just kind of assume that's what's happening here. We're not going to tell you, but assume it.
Yeah, no, I think that's probably fair. I mean, like I said earlier, I do think maybe they did just expect you to believe that Cora D and Axel were already married when he was with Barb or whatever, and it was just kind of maybe some kind of a fling. But even if that, it's just at least in Casablanca, Ilsa thought that Victor was dead.
Right.
You know what I mean?
She's
like
got
that.
it worked. The math checks. The
Right.
math.
Yeah, there is no hole. No hole. No
And you
plot
can't
hole.
blame Elsa. You can't be like, oh, she's very promiscuous to be loving 2 guys. Like, you totally justify her reasoning. So.
Yeah.
All right, Rob, we kind of knew this before we started this podcast. We're going to have to cut ourselves off somewhere. I mean, we probably could talk about Casablanca
for literally
for
another hour.
another
talking about
hour.
Casablanca.
But, again, I like this copy of a copy podcast idea that we're doing because, like, this stealth remake, which is what we're calling the Casablanca Barb Wire relationship, it exists. This was a remake.
100%.
I questioned it at the beginning. I would question, like, are you really... I looked online. I didn't really see a lot of people say Barb Wire was a remake. I'm like, okay, it is. This is most definitely is. So we found one. We found one that you don't see easily on the internet. We are exposing the audience to something new.
Absolutely. If you didn't realize it, now you know. And if I'm not sure. I think you'd be hell bent to find somebody that's going to say Barb Wire is an improvement over Casablanca.
Yeah, I don't think that's gonna happen. Just like I said, there's too many iconic lines in
So,
Casablanca.
so did it need to be made?
No. So why was it made? Let's maybe. I think I do like kind of thinking about that when we talk about remakes. Why did they do this?
Right. I mean, I think ultimately it was a Pam Anderson vehicle. I think it was. There are definitely those movies when it's like, okay, I'm writing this movie or I'm making this movie, and I'm making it for this person.
Yeah.
And I think obviously I wasn't a studio head in the 90s, so I don't know this for sure, but I imagine when this idea came across some executive's desk, they thought Pam Anderson. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? I can see it now. We put her in a corset, which crazy fun fact about that corset, it got her waistline down to 17 inches.
Ouch.
And apparently it made some of the fight sequences very challenging for her to
Or
perform
going to the
in,
bathroom.
right, or doing anything. But yeah, I think that's really what it kind of boils down to is, they had an actress, they were like, okay, we've got this property, because this is I think it was a comic book.
Yeah, I think
Yeah,
it.
it's a comic book. Yeah, a Dark Horse comic book. Before it was a movie, and kind of Tank Girl kind of came in that
Yeah,
same
yeah.
vein, kind of situation. So it's like, not that I imagine they made Tank Girl for Lori Petty. I imagine that was more of a had the property, found the actress. This I could see like they had, okay, well,
Yeah.
you've got this actress who's kind of extremely hot.
Yeah.
In more ways
Probably
than
how
one.
the character was drawn, though, too.
Right,
Yeah.
right, exactly. So we're gonna kind of put them together, and this is what it is. But yeah, I mean, it does have a cult following. So
Give it credit.
as
Give it
far
some
as we're
credit.
we're sitting, it sounds like we're sitting here just kind of beating dead barbed
Yeah.
wire with a baseball bat. But it does have a cult following, and I have, like I said earlier, I have. A little bit of a less harsh maybe opinion than of
Yeah.
it than you, but like I think I think there's a lot of fun elements to it. I wish they let Pam Anderson be more than just the sex symbol. I think they could have really it could have been something that could have launched her into something else because she clearly has the chops. She's proving it to this day.
She's
As we
on a
talked
little bit
about,
of a mini renaissance.
right, like we talked about in the before section. I mean, she is, she was nominated for multiple awards this year for the last Showgirl. So I think, it almost was a disservice to her in a way. Unless this was, as I said earlier, a way for her to kind of retake a little bit of her dignity, her sexual dignity, if you will, after having that sex tape
Sure.
release in '95 with Tommy Lee, because obviously that's a huge invasion of privacy. I know it's affected her life, in more ways than one. So, if that's how she saw it, then more power to her, to do it.
Yeah, I almost wish I wonder if I watched Barb Wire first, since I hadn't seen either of these movies previous, if I would think a little bit better of it because I didn't know beat for beat what the plot line of Casablanca was going to be,
Yeah.
so I wouldn't compare it. Maybe I would think of it a little bit more favorably. Obviously, it wouldn't compare to Casablanca still. Like there's
No.
nothing that could be done to accomplish that. But maybe I would think of it as a little bit higher.
Well, if they had they had taken those side characters maybe a little more seriously. I mean,
Flushed a lot of things out.
right. They needed their Ingrid Bergman, which, quick fun fact again, another fun fact. I love our fun facts around here. Throwback to Blue Velvet. Did you know that Ingrid Bergman is Isabella Rossellini's mom?
No, I didn't know Isabella Rossellini was ever younger than 45.
No? You thought she looked 45 in Blue Velvet?
Yeah,
Maybe
maybe.
somebody's getting ready to get slapped in the face.
Sorry. All right, Rob, well, I've talked to you enough about Casablanca and Barb Wire, but now it's time for me to address the audience. And to the audience, I want to say, of all the gin joints and all the towns and all the worlds, you decided to come into ours and listen to our podcast. And because of that, you owe us a favor. You have to like the podcast, subscribe to the podcast, leave us a 5-star review. If you do, we're going to read it live on air someday. You can also reach out to me and Rob on email at carrayrob@gmail.com, or you can follow us at Blue Sky at carrayrob.
Absolutely. And if you could do us a favor and share the podcast with your family, friends, enemies, the hobo on the street, that would be very much appreciated
We'll
because
take
we
it.
are trying to grow this community, and any amount of help would be great. We will be back next week with this month's episode of Say Hello to My Little Film, and it will be back to Ray.
Yay! Yay! Applause, 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 applause.
And I am a little scared because I kind of maybe threw him a curveball with Videodrome.
I planned on you not liking my July movie because I planned on not liking yours.
Man, this is how it's going to be now. This
But
is our
it
own
didn't
little
work.
private
I liked yours.
This
so-
is our own private second, third, fourth American Civil War
Yeah.
of our own. So, but you are not going to want to miss that because I don't know. We'll see. Maybe I will end up liking it. But until then, this is Car Ray Rob.
Where I'm Ray.
And I'm Rob. And remember, be defined by the films you love, not the ones you hate.
A copy of a copy. 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 A copy of